and I'm being transparent about it now as well. And to see that transparency metastasized into something criminal that I absolutely deny makes me question, is there another agenda at play?
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and over 10 years experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and television shows all over the world. Actor and celebrity host turned YouTuber and wellness guru Russell Brand has been all over the news for some very serious accusations. Over the last week, two media outlets, the Sunday Times and Channel 4's investigative documentary strand Dispatches, reported on some very concerning behaviors. They spoke to some witnesses who claimed that in the time knowing Russell Brand, he was guilty of assault and abuse. However, in an attempt to get ahead of the release of the documentary on Channel 4 titled Russell Brand in Plain Sight, Russell went to his YouTube channel, to his 6.6 million subscribers, and released a video a day before the documentary was released, denying any and all of these accusations. Even if he hadn't heard the testimony of the witnesses yet, there was enough information out there for him to understand the nature of the accusations, and in the video titled "So This Is Happening," he completely denied any such behaviors. But what do his body language, facial expressions, and word choice reveal? And furthermore, what can we learn about effective communication from someone who has a lifetime of experience as a public speaker? Let's dive right in.
Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Now, this isn't the usual type of video we make on this channel where we critique, attack, and undermine the news in all its corruption, because in this story, I am the news. I've received two extremely disturbing letters, one from a mainstream media TV company, one from a newspaper, listing a litany of extremely egregious and aggressive attacks, as well as some pretty stupid stuff like my community festival should be stopped, that I shouldn't be able to attack mainstream media narratives on this channel. But amidst this litany of astonishing, rather baroque attacks are some very serious allegations that I absolutely refute. As I've written about extensively in my books, I was very, very promiscuous. Now, during that time of promiscuity, the relationships I had were absolutely always consensual. I was always transparent about that then, almost too transparent. And I'm being transparent about it now as well. And to see that transparency metastasized into something criminal that I absolutely deny makes me question, is there another agenda at play?
Alright, so the thing I really like about analyzing this particular video is that because Russell Brand is a YouTuber and has a lot of videos in this exact setting talking to his audience, we have a great opportunity to know what his baseline or idiosyncratic behaviors are. In other words, what are the behaviors that are specific to him regardless of the topic? How does he communicate? We have a lot of opportunities to study that. So as we look at this specific video, one of the things that will jump out is his blink rate. So the average blink rate for most people is somewhere between 14 to 21 blinks a minute. And a lot of research has shown that in moments of stress or processing, when we're processing information, that blink rate tends to go up. So whether we're stressed or trying to recall or trying to retrieve a memory, that blink rate goes up. So you would think that somebody who's trying to give a lot of information and is talking about something stressful, you would expect to see a blink rate that's either above average or at the very least average. But if we look at this video, Russell Brand's blink rate is eerily low. He blinks very rarely. Now, is this important? Does it tell me anything? Not really. It doesn't give me much, because usually we're not looking for stagnant behaviors, we're looking for a change in behavior. So if somebody blinks at a normal rate, all of a sudden they're blinking much less, this could indicate that all of a sudden something has their attention, something has their focus. Because when we're focused on something, that blink rate goes down. But in his case, the blink rate didn't diminish. It was low to begin with, pretty much the entire video, and in all of his other videos, he normally has a very low blink rate. We call this an idiosyncratic behavior. It means that Russell Brand's blink rate, for whatever reason, is lower than average. Another thing you'll notice is that throughout this first part, this first clip that we looked at, his hands were up here almost the entire time. And he's illustrating up here. And illustrators are the gestures that complement the things we say. So when our hands move to demonstrate or illustrate what we're saying. And all his illustrators in this first part are up here. Sometimes they go higher, but not once in that first part do they rest down here as he's saying something. Now, this is also idiosyncratic for him. If we look at other videos that he has, he's very often up here. But the difference is, in those other videos, there are moments of relaxation where he rests and then he gets passionate again and he comes back up here. So when he's passionate about something, really trying to convey it, demonstrate it, paint a clear image for his viewers, we're seeing these gestures up here. Normally there's that rest period, but then we come back up here. So we can assume that he's worked up here. The whole time there's a very important message. He wants to keep that attention. Remember, he has a lifetime of experience public speaking, hosting. He knows how to get and keep that attention. He's very lively with his hands, and we're seeing that a lot in this first half. So the illustrators are more or less the same, but there is something on his face that is significantly different from a lot of his other videos, and it's how wide his eyes are open. So if we normally look at the rest of his videos, usually, there are exceptions to this, but usually his eyes are quite relaxed as he's talking. Yes, he gets worked up sometimes, but usually the baseline is a very normal opening of the eyes. In this video, however, we could see that his eyes are wide open as he's talking. A lot of the time, for most of this video, his eyes are wide open like this. Now, the research tells us that when our eyes are wide open, we take in more information with our peripherals. Therefore, with emotions like anger, surprise, or fear, it's common to see those eyes open up because we're taking more information in to assess and figure out how to react. In fact, a lot of people incorrectly assume that the way to know for a fact that somebody's angry or experiencing anger is when the eyebrows come down or when we see tension around the lips. And although these are good indications of anger, they also happen in deep thought. When we're really focused on something, that kind of thing is very common. The telltale sign that someone's experiencing anger is when that upper eyelid opens up all the way. Look at the difference between this and this. I'll put them side by side so you could see just how much of a difference that upper eyelid can make. In fact, when I'm professionally doing my cold readings out there for entertainment, and I'm reading someone and a topic comes up and I see those upper eyelids open up, I immediately take my cold read towards negative experiences or anger, and most of the time, that's a direct hit. Usually with happiness, the face relaxes, the eyes even squint a little bit, whereas with anger or surprise or fear or frustration or being more alert, and in most cases when we're alert, when we're kind of on edge, it's not a positive thing, those eyes open up. Okay, now that we're familiar with his baseline and his idiosyncratic behaviors, we're gonna take it from the top and look at his body language and also, as importantly, his word choice, because there's a lot of really great stuff here about effective communication. But before we do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on for more behavioral analysis and practical psychology content. And for regular viewers who want to encourage the channel, I will leave a link in the description where you can learn more about the membership program and how you can join. All right, so first words out of his mouth as he greets the audience, he says, this isn't going to be the usual kind of video we make on this channel where we critique, attack, and undermine the news and all its corruption. And honestly, that is a great way to start this video for a multitude of reasons. First of all, he's aware that he's still on YouTube. He's still on the platform that is going to bring traffic to this video. He knows the video is going to do pretty well. So anyone who comes in, immediately, he starts by introducing the concept of his channel. Before he talks about what this day is about, he says that's what we normally do here. So anyone who's looking for that kind of content goes, oop, subscribe. He's saying that this isn't a video where he's going to critique, attack, or undermine the news, but he goes on to do that. After he denies the allegations, he really talks about how corrupt the news is. So he's saying it's not that, but he's going to go on to say that. And what's happening here is that he's just planting that seed. Before he talks about any of the allegations, he's just planting a seed in the head of the viewer that the news is corrupt and is untrustworthy. Now, as he's talking in the beginning, introducing the video and what it's going to be about or what it's not going to be about, you'll notice he's illustrating a lot with the hands sideways like this. And research has shown that this is the most common hand orientation for people who speak English. So hand orientation is not universal. Everywhere in the world, people illustrate with different orientations. English speakers, this is the orientation we see the most often. For example, French speakers, palms up is a lot more common. However, as he shifts the conversation towards the actual accusations, we see the hands go from this to this. And now he's gesturing like this, illustrating like this, talking about the letter, the email. Now, despite the fact that the hand orientation is not universal when it comes to illustrators, there are two orientations that seem to have a universal meaning. One of them is palms up. And palms up is very commonly seen all over the world whenever there's a conversation about giving or receiving something. We see this kind of gesture with even asking for something, even asking for forgiveness. you might see someone with their hands up like this. And the other one, which we see pretty much anywhere in the world, is palms out like this. And this pretty much anywhere in the world is a sign of negation. So when you're trying to stop someone, or even like something happens that startles you and you just want to stop, so this is often referred to as a stop gesture, but in the research they call it negation. We even see it when we're trying to stop someone. So it's not necessarily a negative thing, but we're trying to get their attention, trying to hail a cab, trying to say, hey, trying to get someone's attention. That palm comes out almost anywhere in the world. Now, could this palm outwards just be a seasoned entertainer, performer, host, knowing how to gesture to get attention? It could be, but that shift is still very noteworthy because he went from this to this. I believe that in this moment, as he's talking about these accusations and what they're alleging, I think there's a certain plea, a subconscious plea to his audience, to his viewers, the ones that there's going to be a lot of little subtle messages in this where he's talking directly to his followers. And I think here it's a plea to help him stop these accusations, stop this media trying to paint him under this light. There's a really interesting micro expression right there. And it's really fascinating because in this micro expression, we see something that's not very common for him. So it's a really good indication that there's a moment of emotion coming out here. It's really, really fleeting. And it's when he says egregious and aggressive. In fact, it's right between the two words. Just after he says egregious, just before he says aggressive, we see a very quick flash of disgust on his face. So disgust is a universal emotion where anywhere in the world, people will recognize this as disgust, and we even see it in babies. And what's basically happening is there's an unpleasant input, and so we're trying to shut down our perception or our intake of that input. So there's a lot of scrunching happening. The sides of the nose crinkle up like this to try to close the nose because we don't want to smell it, and there's tension in the mouth as well like this. Everything closes with disgust. Now, in his case, in that moment, it was really, really quick, but we saw the eyebrows come down. This does not happen very often for him. As he's talking, on occasion, we get those eyebrow flashes, which usually indicates trying to socially connect with the audience or emphasize something. They rarely go down. In that moment, egregious and boom, we see it. Aggressive, those eyebrows come down for a quick sec, and we see that scrunching very quick as well. Now, it's a little bit more on our right to his left, but not enough for me to go, that's definitely contempt. It could be contempt, it could be disgust, but in this case, they both mean the same thing. Whether he's contemptuous or disgusted by the way that narrative is being spinned here, we're seeing it come out in this moment. There's disgust towards the media. It's very, very hard for me to pause it exactly on that moment because again, it's really fast. So I'll play that segment for you a couple of times in succession. Just look at right before aggressive. It just goes really quick like that. That was even, the way I just did it was even a little too much. It's just a very quick version of that.
Extremely egregious and aggressive attacks. Extremely egregious and aggressive attacks. Extremely egregious and aggressive attacks.
As he's saying, as well as some pretty stupid stuff, we see the eyebrows dip down, but here's what's interesting. It's not the inner corner of the eyebrows coming down, it's the outer corners coming down, which we normally associate with sadness, but I've often seen this with Russell Brand when he's talking about something that annoys, frustrates, or confuses him.
Not create some disgusting, appalling, visually anomalous, and morally reprehensible new food source. Yeah, we'll do the second. And the mad static that takes place in the mainstream, the kind of political figures that are offered up to you as leaders will continue with the war machine, continuing down this mythic path of progressivism, which seems to be continually in power, one set of interests.
I think that besides the concerning allegations, there's some stupid stuff that's completely disconnected that they're going after, which is what he's about to list. As he's listing the things that they're trying to stop him from doing, we see some interesting behaviors. First, once again, notice how wide those eyes open up. But more importantly, right after he says that he should stop his festival, his community festival, and he goes on and he's about to say that he shouldn't be allowed to attack the media, we see an eyebrow flash. Just between those two statements, we see the eyebrows go up. And again, the eyes open up with that as the eyebrows come up like this, as he's listing those things.
Like my community festival should be stopped, that I shouldn't be able to attack mainstream media narratives.
Now, we talk a lot about eyebrow flash on the channel, and there's a lot of research on this. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to learn more about why we know this. But eyebrow flash typically comes down to emphasis, social connection or approval, or surprise. And very often we see it with emphasis on the channel. We talk a lot about it. We rarely see it for what this is. This is surprise. It also explains why the eyes are opening up at the same time. Like, he can't believe that they're trying to take that and make this out of it. Like, stop my festival and I'm not allowed to talk to the media. Like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? At the same time, I believe there is an appeal to his audience. Like, saying like, this is what they want, and trying to connect with that eyebrow flash, get that approval from the audience in cueing them and saying, this is what they want to do, by the way, based on these accusations, because he knows his audience well. They're going to go, that's outrageous. They can't stop you from doing that because of these accusations. So again, there are these little moments where he's speaking directly to his fans. This is one of them. Next, when he says that there are some very serious accusations that I absolutely refute, we see those hands once again, palms out, absolutely refute. So again, this is stop gesture, negation, and of course it makes sense what he's saying, refute, refuse, negative, no. Then as he's talking about his past behaviors, he says, as I've written about extensively in my books, I was very, very promiscuous. In their book, Spy the Lie, 3 ex-CIA interrogators call this a referral statement. Anytime we say, as I said previously, as I said in my speech, as I wrote about in my books, where we reference ourselves from a previous statement. Now, a referral statement can indicate deception, but it would have to be part of a cluster. Always remember, we can never tell if someone is lying based on one behavior or even a collection of behaviors. We can only know that there's something going on here, and we need to ask a few more questions when we see a lot of behaviors that indicate stress happening at the same time. Referral statements don't necessarily indicate stress, but they do indicate that the person has a certain script in their head that they're sticking to, and that they want to show that there's consistency in their story. So when it's seen within a cluster of behaviors, it's quite important to note. But in this case, it isn't really part of a cluster. We're not seeing a whole bunch of other things at the same time. He's simply, again, trying to get ahead of it and saying, I've been open about this. It's not a big secret that I was promiscuous. I've written about it. I was open about it. And he's kind of trying to preempt the message that he is open, he is honest, and this is something, the promiscuity, that he's already talked about. Then we get a very bold statement where he says, the relationships I had, even in that promiscuity, were absolutely always consensual. There's no ambiguity there, there's no caveat, there's no uncertainty. It's a very high confidence statement. Now remember, he's saying this before the documentary's out. He doesn't have every single detail of what the allegations are going to be, but he's immediately saying that they were absolutely always consensual. See, when we make bold claims like that, big absolutes, they're much easier to break with just one exception, just one story. So if, for example, he said, consent has always been very important to me. Well, if somebody has a story that's kind of on the line of non-consent, they wouldn't really come out and be like, now hold on a second, that's not true. Because he's saying it's important to him. But when he says they were absolutely always consensual, it's easier for someone who has a story that contradicts that to just come out and break that entire statement. There's something else that's really fascinating in that statement. Absolutely always consensual. Between always and consensual, there's a cut. A few frames are removed.
Absolutely always consensual.
Now, very often when we see a jump cut like that, typically it means that there were a few takes and the editor took 2 of them and mushed them together. But in this case, that's not what it is. Because if we look at his movement, as he's talking, he's moving down, and after that cut, he's pretty much in the exact same position. His hair is the exact same, and he's got long hair. Had he moved around at all between these two, it would look significantly different. His hands are in the same position, his shoulders are in the same position. In the background, there are screens behind him, and those kind of shift, but those are constantly moving. So that shift makes a lot of sense in that moment. But the bottom line is, it's very likely that this was the same take and they just removed a couple of milliseconds there. And I wonder if it's because like the mic popped or there was some kind of a sound or something happened where they just removed that little frame just to get rid of that, whatever that thing was. But it's extremely unlikely that this was 2 takes mushed together because it's way too consistent for that. When he talks about how he was transparent back then, almost too transparent, we again see that thing with the eyebrows that comes down like this. I think once again, this is what happens to his face when he's annoyed or frustrated with something. In this case, he's annoyed or frustrated with the fact that he's been so honest. He did everything he could, and somehow this is being misconstrued. And I think he's very annoyed with that in this moment. Then we get, which I absolutely deny. So once again, full confidence, direct, no ambiguity statement there. And by the way, I'm not saying that because we're getting these direct denials that it definitely means he's innocent of all these accusations. That's not what I'm saying at all. At the end of the video, we're going to look at all these behaviors and see what they indicate. But for now, all I'm saying is that we're getting these very confident, direct denials. Doesn't mean he's innocent, doesn't mean he's guilty. And from there he goes to, which makes me wonder if there's another agenda at play. So now he's going to his comfort. Now he's going to what he knows his 6.6 million fans have subscribed to this channel for, an opportunity to attack the media. So that's what we're getting here, and let's take a look at where we go with the video after that statement.
I'm aware that you guys have been saying in the comments for a while, watch out Russell, they're coming for you, you're getting too close to the truth. I know that a year ago there was a spate of articles, Russell Brand's a conspiracy theorist, Russell Brand's right wing. I'm aware of news media making phone calls, sending letters to people I know for ages and ages. It's been clear to me, or at least it feels to me, like there's a serious and concerted agenda to control these kind of spaces and these kind of voices. What I seriously refute are these very, very serious criminal allegations. Also, it's worth mentioning that there are witnesses whose evidence directly contradicts the narratives that these two mainstream media outlets are trying to construct, apparently in what seems to me to be a coordinated attack. We are obviously going to look into this matter because it's very, very serious. In the meantime, I want you to stay close, stay awake, but more important than any of that, if you can, please stay free.
We talked a lot about body language in the first segment. With this one, I want to focus a little bit more on what he's saying because there are a lot of really great lessons in communication in this second segment. So starting with right in the beginning where he says, I'm aware that you guys have been saying in the comments for a while, watch out Russell, they're coming for you, you're getting too close to the truth. And honestly, that's a really smart little thing to throw into this speech. Here's why. Once again, he's aware that he's talking to his 6.6 million supporters, fans. They're the ones who are going to be out there pushing the narrative that he's innocent of these accusations. So when he says that, when he says, you guys have been saying this in the comments, these are your words, that makes anyone, whoever commented on his video saying like, watch out man, they're coming for you, go, yeah, I knew it. I knew this was going to happen. So now he makes it seem like this was their idea. They knew ahead of time this was going to happen. And that skyrockets their commitment. Because they remember that, yeah, they knew this was going to happen. I was right, and now it's happening. The other reason it's quite clever for him to say, you guys have been saying this in the comments for a while, is because he knows that this video is going to go viral. It's going to attract a lot of people who are not regular viewers and are trying to figure out what's going on. When they hear that, it enacts a very basic but powerful social psychological principle called social proof. So when they hear that all these other people who watch him have been saying this for a while in the comments, it kind of subtly suggests to them that there must be some truth to this. Because no matter how much we like to believe that we think for ourselves as individuals, and in a lot of cases that is true, study after study after study has shown that in a lot of cases we behave the way people like us behave, and we reach conclusions that people like us reach as well. This is very deeply embedded in the way that we evolved from tribal societies, because if you were different or thought different or went against the majority, you'd be outcast and your bloodline would die in that moment. This is the exact reason that marketing campaigns say things like bestseller or top rated. Like other people are liking this, you will like it too. So the moment he says, you know, a lot of you said that something like this was coming, someone who's not really familiar with him or what he talks about or what's going on goes, oh, okay, so a lot of people have been saying this, it must be true. There's a subtle difference in his body language between the second clip we looked at and the first one. In the first one, with his greeting at first, his chin was up, but then as he was talking about the allegations and most of the rest of that clip, his chin was either straight or down a little bit like this. In the second clip, quite often we're seeing his chin a little bit higher up as he exposes a bit more of that neck. And this makes perfect sense. Usually when we're defensive or vulnerable, things close in, including the chin. We do something called turtling, shoulders up, chin down. But with confidence or pride, usually we're more open, we're more exposed. So in the first part, when he's talking about the accusations, the allegations, and nasty stuff, he's a little more defensive, or getting those stop gestures. In the second half though, he's talking about the big evil media and how you guys knew. So this is more his element. He's more comfortable with this. He's more confident with this. Speaking of things he says to raise the commitment of his subscribers, shortly after that he says, it's been clear to me or at least feels to me like there's a serious and concerted agenda to control these kinds of spaces and these kinds of voices.
It's been clear to me, or at least it feels to me like there's a serious and concerted agenda.
So he starts by saying, it's been clear to me, like it's clear. Then he changes that. He amends it in real time to, or at least it feels to me. And again, this is quite clever because it almost sends a different message depending on who the viewer is. To his subscribers, those who are loyal to him, this is almost a signal for them to go, no, you're right. It's not just a feeling. You're absolutely right. That's what they're trying to do. And in that same moment, he's also appealing to people who are not his viewers. Again, he's conscious that given the news cycle right now, this video is very likely going to go viral, and a lot of people who are not exactly on board with his anti-government, anti-media views are going to watch this. So when he says, when he corrects himself in going, it's been clear to me to, at least it feels to me, someone who isn't that polarized in these opinions will go, oh, okay, well that's refreshing. He's not one of those people who's like, this is for sure what it is, big conspiracy theorist. He's saying that's what it feels like. There seems to be a little bit more balance, and therefore people who tend to not really connect with extreme messaging like that will connect with this. There's a statement he made that really piqued my interest. It's when he says that he has witnesses who can directly contradict the narrative that these two media outlets are trying to construct.
Also, it's worth mentioning that there are witnesses whose evidence directly contradicts the narratives that these two mainstream media outlets are trying to construct.
Now keep in mind, at this point, he hadn't seen the actual documentary. So he's saying that without having the details of what they're alleging or what's being said, I have witnesses who can contradict that narrative. What that tells me is the following. His witnesses can't contradict the specific stories of the witnesses because he doesn't even know what they are. It's more than likely that what he means is that he has witnesses who could speak to his character and say things like, we've been in situations with him where we didn't give him consent and that's where he drew the line. That's probably what he's talking about because he doesn't know what the specific accusations are or who they're coming from. And because he's saying that I have witnesses who can refute the narrative, not the testimony, not the specific story, because it's likely that in that story, there weren't any witnesses. So what he's saying here, he's representing it as somebody could contradict the testimony. That's what he's trying to represent it as. But what he actually means, if we listen to the details of his words, is that he has witnesses who could contradict that this is the type of person he is. So not the specific accusations, the global accusation. Then once again, we get seems to me to be a coordinated attack. And that goes right back to his use of the word seems earlier again, less certainty, so that his fans will come in and go, no, it doesn't just seem to you, that's what it is. And the people who are not his regular viewers go, okay, so he's not that polarized, there's some balance here. It's really a good choice of words. Okay, so we're getting a lot of great information from the body language, from the word choice. We have indications that there are certain moments he's a bit more comfortable with, some moments where he's a little bit more stressed, a little bit more on edge. We could say there are certain things that he's choosing very carefully to message, to speak directly to his subscribers. Before we get to the conclusion, I do want to add one more thing in for your consideration. So Russell Brand historically has been known not only for his promiscuous behavior, like he mentioned in the video, but also for moments where he practiced a lack of judgment. The example that comes to mind is that in 2001, on September 12th, that's one day after 9/11, he walked into his job at MTV dressed up as Osama bin Laden. As a result, he got fired from that job. So he's talked about this openly, by the way, and he said that he was on a lot of drugs back then. And he's mentioned how when you do that much hard drugs, it messes with you. It messes with your behaviors. It messes with your personality. So he has admitted that that was in poor taste, like other things that he's done and has been open about, but it happened nonetheless. So if we just look at that fact and start from there, it actually puts 1 point in the pros list and 1 in the cons list. In the cons list, it's the obvious one. The fact that there's plenty of evidence that he's done some pretty foolish things in the past. Things that have a serious lack of judgment, quite insensitive. But then on the pros side is that so far as we know, he's been very open about it. He's taken full accountability for it, no excuses. And that goes for a lot of things like this, not just that specific event. So yeah, really silly behavior, but full accountability. And now we have him denying some very serious accusations and my mind goes to a couple of places. First of all, behaviorally, the denial is good. I have to be honest about that. It's a good denial. It's a direct denial. There's no ambiguity. It's not like we're seeing these clusters, these excuses. There's not really a big redirect. Yeah, somebody redirects the whole thing and talks about the evil media, but that's after we got some very clear, flat out denials, but that doesn't really prove anything in either direction. All it means is that in the thousands of denials that I've seen over my career, this is a pretty confident and convincing one, at least to himself. He seems pretty convinced that these things didn't happen behaviorally. I say this again and again and again in my videos, but behavior cannot allow us to know with certainty if someone is being truthful or deceptive. All we can do is observe until we see some clusters, and that allows us to ask more questions in that moment because the odds of deception are a little bit higher, but it's never certain. Furthermore, just because we're not seeing clusters of deception, it doesn't mean that somebody is being honest. So behaviorally, this is a strong denial. Does that mean he's innocent? No. Does it mean he's guilty? No. It's also very possible that because in this time period, he was indulging in very heavy drugs, he admitted to that. He also admitted that it impaired his judgment. It's very possible that there are certain things that he just remembers differently. So there are going to be different narratives between what he remembers and he recalls and what these alleged victims are saying. At the end of the day, I don't want to invalidate the testimony of these alleged victims. Everyone who has something to report like this should do so very openly. I also don't want to invalidate his denial. This isn't me defending him. This isn't me attacking him. This is me just pointing out behaviors and saying, at the very least, his denial seems quite confident to him. But let me know in the comments what you think. We've looked at a lot of denials and apologies on the channel, and there are times where we've looked at some that behaviorally were just a disaster. Do you agree that this one appears to be a little bit more confident, or do you think that there's something more under the surface here and we're not getting a full truth from Russell Brand? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you on the next one.